Right, there we are. Okay then, so welcome everyone, croeso bawb. Welcome, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Diolch yn fawr i chi am ymuno pnawn 'ma. Hopefully it'll be an interesting session, hopefully. So my name is Dr. Gareth Evans-Jones. I'm a lecturer in religious studies here at the School of History, Philosophy and Social Sciences at Bangor University, North Wales. And one of my areas that I teach in is actually Buddhism, and obviously Buddhist ethics plays an important role in that regards. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at Buddhism and see how ethical in actuality it is as a religion based with a different morality standards and the different core beliefs that Buddhists hold. So to begin with, I think a good place to begin with is just with the Buddha, the one obviously who founded this new interesting religion which is still in existence even today. So just a bit of background, there's no consensus into actually when the Buddha existed. However, scholars have tended to say that he lived during the time between the 6th century and the 5th century before Common Era, so about 500 to 400 BCE. Now, the name of the historical Buddha is Gautama or Gautama. There are different ways of spelling his name, obviously, and he was referred to as the Buddha only after he reached enlightenment, so when he became that all-knowing, that knowledgeable being. He's also referred to as Buddha Shakyamuni, so I might refer to Buddha Siddhartha Gautama as the Buddha, the historical Buddha, or Buddha Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni obviously means a sage or a wise man of the Shakya clan, and obviously that being Siddhartha Gautama. Again, bit of background, he was a member of the Shakya clan. His first name was Siddhartha. Now, it was prophesied that Siddhartha would lead one of two lives. So he would either become a notable leader or a king of sorts, or a wise man or a Buddha. Now, obviously, his father liked the idea of his son becoming a powerful individual, and obviously being quite a militant individual. So Siddhartha was brought up in a way of living where he was free from the negative elements of existence. As such, he led a healthy life. He married and bore a son. However, one day Siddhartha Gautama goes riding, and he sees what we have now become used to call the 4 signs. So he saw 4 exact scenes which led him to question existence and to rethink his whole understanding of existence. Now, the signs were an old man, a diseased man, a corpse, and a wise ascetic man. Now, these led him to think, why do we age? Why do people age? Why do people suffer illnesses? Why do people die? What was the cause of this ascetic man looking so content? So he started searching for these answers, and quickly he started living as an ascetic. So he went about his life, and he would lead daily rituals of not eating that much. So he went so thin, it said that one could see his spine through his stomach. So we say that shows how thin he actually was. And he started meditating. Now, meditation came to help him to start to understand why these things happened to people. And then, as he meditated once, he understood if he continued living an ascetic life, all that would wait for him would be death. So he decided to eat, nourish his body again, and he decided to meditate under a Bodhi tree until he would achieve enlightenment. Now we know as he did so, he was tempted, he was challenged by Mara, the sort of devil god who tried to sway Gautama from the goal of reaching enlightenment. But Gautama was able to conquer Mara and said he would not move until he reached truth, until he would reach enlightenment. And in the end, he did attain enlightenment. Now, that's just the background of the Buddha in a nutshell. We see nearly straight on from the second he becomes enlightened, ethics plays a part in his teaching, right? From the second he's enlightened, he thinks of the way people should behave, how people should act towards each other, how people should exist. Now, following that enlightenment, he preached a sermon, and the first sermon he preached was on the Four Noble Truths. Now, the Four Noble Truths are important to understand why people suffer, and as a default, by understanding why suffering happens, we can understand better how to try and avoid suffering and how to act in an ethical manner, how to act in a correct way. So suffering is the first of the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha is another word. So suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Now, all enlightened beings are affected by dukkha, right? The only time someone can be free from dukkha is when one attains enlightenment. So suffering is a major negative element within life. Now, the second noble truth explains what the cause of dukkha actually is. So the source or the cause, samudaya, is actually craving, tanha, wanting, right? Wanting materialistic things or wanting things to stay the same as they are. The idea that someone strives to maintain a similar way, a similar flow within life. That's what people strive to attain to. And when those ideals can be met, dukkha actually takes place. Obviously, suffering occurs. Now, the third noble truth is nirodha, or end. Now, the end of dukkha will actually happen when someone ends ignorance. Okay, so in order to end suffering, one has to end ignorance, i.e., lack of understanding or the inability to fully understand the natural world. And the only solution to dukkha, the end which would bring an end to dukkha, is actually nirvana. And the way to reach nirvana is through the eightfold path, or marga, the path, the way. Now, straight away, we see here a link to ethics. How should one behave? How should we, as Buddhists, want to behave in order to gain enlightenment and to actually fulfill our expectancies? And the Buddha said, follow the eightfold path. It's the way, it's the middle way between two extremes, from one type of life or another type of life. It's a way, it's a happy medium between two extremes. Now, it's important that we actually look at the eightfold path in detail, because by doing so, we can start to appreciate fuller the types of ethics that are intrinsic within Buddhism. So the first step or the first aspect of the Eightfold Path is right intention. So when we think of ethics, how people behave to each other, how do we behave to ourselves, how do we help others, we always have to think of what our intentions actually are. So we always have to remember that our actions have consequences. As anything within ethics, we always have to think what happened and why was that debatable, or why did that have an ethical implication. Of always, what is the intention, what drives an individual to act. Then as we understand what our intention actually is, we can view the world clearer, right view, so we can think, we can perceive the world in a better way than perhaps um, if we didn't think before we actually did something. So as we can see here, there's a lot of emphasis being placed on thinking and rationality and carefully perceiving how things will actually take place and how things will actually act and will impact others. So the third of the Eightfold Path is right speech. Again, make sure you speak properly, make sure you speak clearly, you don't tell lies, you don't swear, and you don't gossip. The next, right action. Again, how do you act? How do you behave? Obviously, ethics comes into that question. How do we behave in an appropriate manner? So do not kill, do not harm others, do not steal, do not be materialistic. So these types of elements which in actuality lead one to behave in a correct manner. And what is ethics in actuality on the way on but the way we actually behave, the way we actually go about our daily business. Then right livelihood, make sure we live in an honest way. Make sure you get a good livelihood by honest means, and make sure you only get what you need. You don't get an excess of things. Remember, others need certain things as well. So don't be too greedy. Don't be too materialistic. Don't be too having in that regards. Now the next of the full path, right effort. Make sure you act in the best way every time. Always think what the consequence could be. Now, if we want to create a positive consequence, we should act in a correct manner. We should act in an ethical manner. Again, thinking about how we act and how that action could impact others in actuality. The next being right mindfulness. Now, if anything, this element of mindfulness is like um, a constant theme throughout all of the 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path, because it's always down to how one thinks, how one rationalizes, how someone believes they should act in a correct way, having thought properly, having thought in depth about actions and consequences. And the last one, right, meditation, being aware of the dharmas which are beneficial for the path of the Buddhist. Now, dharmas obviously are the teachings of the Buddha, the different doctrines presented by Siddhartha Gautama, and right meditation. Meditation is obviously a key factor. That's how the Buddha attained enlightenment. Again, meditation is impossible. Is important. It's not impossible. Everyone can meditate in different ways. And again, the idea meditating in a correct way, and that will lead on to create positive consequences, hopefully, and that again leading on to create positive ethical implications. Now, we're all aware of the concept of samsara, the concept of rebirth. So the idea that someone is born, lives, die, and is reborn straight after. Now, the important thing is to remember with samsara is that everything is impermanent. There's no such thing as a permanent entity. Everything is continually changing. Everything is always in motion. Because of that, there is no permanent self. So we are not permanent. So we are no selves. We are impermanent. Now, why is that important to ethics? Well, it's important because it always reminds someone of the fluidity of our existence, and how we behave can always be changed. If we've acted in an unethical manner, that doesn't mean we're stuck on that path. We can always adapt. It's always fluid. We can change. We can act in a more positive manner if we've been selfish for some reasons, or if we've acted in our our own interests alone. We can always change. That being, samsara enables someone to understand that we can act in an ethical way. We are not doomed to um, a specific path that we've started formulating. Now, another concept which is key to understanding ethics within Buddhism is karma. Now, karma or karma, obviously meaning action, and action leading on to consequences. Now, the doctrine, the concept of karma is important because it always reminds someone that any way we act, we always create a consequence. Now, obviously, in order to act in a correct manner, we will create correct consequences. Again, ethics comes into that question. If we want to create positive ethical consequences, we must act in an ethical manner, in the best ethical manner. And so we must act and create good actions, and they will lead on to good karma. If we do bad actions, obviously that will lead on to negative karmatic energy. And as you know, karma does have an impact on an individual's life, either straight away or in a in a few years or in a few lifetimes. Karma does have an impact on an individual, and in that regard, we must always think what would be the best option with regards to karma, and in that in question, what is the most ethical thing we can do in order to create positive karma. And now again, just linking the karma aspect with samsara. Remember that the Buddha taught that Buddhists, that we are in perpetual motion. We are in a state of dependent origination, meaning everything leads on to everything else. Okay, it's a cause and effect. So this concept, this sacred wheel, if you'd like to think of it that way, or circle, is termed the pratitaya samutpada. So again, linking to the circle of rebirth, samsara, and the idea being that one thing leads on to another and continues that way. There is nothing independent of other things. We are all in a state of existence being influenced by past existence, and we have an impact on future existence as well. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, as you know, the goal of the Buddhist is to reach nirvana. Now, nirvana being a type of existence where an individual is free from samsara. So when the circle, the pratitaya samutpada, is broken. Now, when one reaches nirvana, an individual will see the world as it is, will see reality for what it is, and how the natural order is actually in existence. You will have clear understanding of karma and samsara. There is no rebirth after reaching nirvana. There is no karma after reaching nirvana. But in order to reach nirvana, one must act in a correct manner. Again, ethics plays an important role in this regards. So one must act in an ethical manner. One must act in the way that will create the best ethical implications, best ethical effects possible. When a person who has reached nirvana dies, they will not be reborn. They will enter a state called pari-nirvana, a higher nirvana, a higher state of clarity and understanding. Now, Buddhist ethics and Dharma. Now, Dharma obviously is the teaching of the Buddha. Now, to what extent did the Buddha discuss ethics? Did he discuss ethics at all? Does Dharma include ethics within it? These are the types of questions that we must consider when we discuss Buddhism and ethics. So, as you well know, Dharma denotes the teachings of the Buddha. So the Dharma, with a capital D, being the body of teachings of the Buddha. Now, the most fundamental teaching of the Dharma is the Four Noble Truths. Okay, that's the fundamental teaching. And that's the core philosophy of Buddhism. The idea of suffering, what the cause of suffering is, how do we overcome suffering, and how would we expect to live in a world once we understand what suffering actually is, and how can we live in a state free from suffering. Now, the Four Noble Truths and Ethics, Damien Keown, who is a Buddhist ethicist, he believes that the Four Noble Truths have a central role within Buddhist ethics. Okay, so we've looked at the Four Noble Truths in detail, and this is what he says. Buddhists, accordingly, see morality as embedded in the nature of things and believe that someone who leads a moral life is in harmony with the cosmic order, and as a result can expect to prosper and flourish. Those who live immorally, on the other hand, and pursue a course contrary to the requirements of Dharma, can expect only unhappiness and misfortune as a result. So I think two important things are brought up there by Keown. The first being that ethics is embedded within Buddhist teaching, within the Dharma, and it's quite clear within the Four Noble Truths. So what is the cause of suffering? How do we overcome suffering? What is the right way? And what can we hope to get after we overcome it, after we become free, nirodha, after we extinguish that craving? The second important element rising from there is this. Those who live immorally, on the other hand, and pursue a course contrary to the requirements of Dharma, people who don't obey the teachings of the Buddha, can expect only unhappiness and misfortune as a result. So what we see here is, again, reference towards the concept of karma. If someone behaves in an immoral way, if someone behaves in a negative manner and does not obey the Dharma, one will create negative karmatic energy. So what we see here with ethics within Buddhist teaching in its most general form is that ethics should be driven by a selfless want to help others and a selfless way to act, but also with knowledge of whatever someone will act, however someone will act in a specific way, that will impact their karma, that will always impact their karmatic energy. So if someone acts in a good way, in an ethical manner, lives according to the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, they should create positive karma. They should benefit from that karmatic energy, and at the same time help others act in a positive manner, in a very positive karmatic state towards others. So we see here karma being an important motivation in a sense, karma being a driving force for people, for Buddhists to think, I want to act in a positive manner to help others and to produce good karma so that I can benefit from such positive karma in consequence. Now, the teachings of the Buddha concerning karma are linked to the ethical elements of the Dharma, and they stress that there are consequences to people's actions. So that's an important aspect to remember. Every time we say, do, think anything, that always has an impact on karma and can have an impact on others within society. So in order to have a positive impact, having positive consequences, one must think in a positive manner, act in a positive manner, and attain positive karmatic energy. Another way of thinking about that is karma is a chain of cause and effects. So every time something happens, it will have an effect, and that will have another effect and another effect until it carries on. It's like a domino, a pattern. Once the domino has fallen, it has an impact on the rest of the dominoes, which in sequence will lead towards someone else in that regards. So in simple terms, good intent leads on to good action, leads on to good karma. Bad intent leads on to bad action, leads on to bad karma. So we see karma playing a major role within ethics in this regard, within the Buddhist understanding of ethics. Now, Buddhists believe that every action is spurred on by any one of 6 roots or motivations or intentions, and it's possible to divide these roots into 2 groups. The first 3 leading on to positive actions, the other 3 leading on to harmful negative actions. So the first 3, the positive roots, are no attachment, goodwill and kindness, and understanding. Now, these will help the Buddhist on their journey to enlightenment. No attachment, not being attached to earthly things, having goodwill and kindness, being kind, treating others with kindness, being kind towards oneself, and understanding, being much more understanding, not being blinkered and narrow-minded, being much more understanding of an individual stance, understanding of others' perceptions, and understanding of various different teachings and understandings and knowledges within the world. So these are the 3 positive types of karmatic, what can we say, karmatic roots or karmatic motivations or intentions. So if one leads a life with these 3 elements, these positive roots, one can lead on to positive karma and also act in a moral way, in an ethical manner. Now, the other side of the coin is obviously the negative roots, these being moha, ignorance, raga, lust or attachment, and dvesha, hatred. The other name on these 3 roots are the 3 vices or the 3 poisons. Obviously, these 3 elements being detrimental to one's life, to one's behavior in life, to one's actions within life, and how one impacts other people's. And if one acts with those 3 roots, leading an individual's actions and way of living, then what would happen is that would lead on to negative energies and obviously negative karma, and act in an immoral way, in an unethical way, and would lead on to detrimental and harmful consequences. So we can see here a sort of an amalgamation of all these different teachings, tying in together the Four Noble Truths, the Dharma in general, karma. We see all these different aspects all sort of merging with each other, and they all feed in to each other, and they complement each other and our understanding of the different aspects within karmatic teaching, within Buddhist teaching, within the Dharmatic teaching. Now, the four elements of karma, the first element being aim. What does someone who acts in a specific way hope to fulfill? What do they hope to get out of acting in a specific way, of saying something specific? What do they hope to gain from that specific action? Again, here, the Eightfold Path is important, right intention, right mindfulness. What does someone think? Does someone consider if we act in this specific way, is that correct or is it incorrect? Why would it be correct? Why would they be harmful? Now, aim is the first element. The second element being intent. What is the driving force behind this action? What is the intent behind a specific thought or action or way of being? What is the driving force? What is this fire that spurs someone on to act in a specific manner? The third element obviously being the action itself, the way an action is acted upon, the way it's implemented, the way it's actually fulfilled. And the final element being satisfaction. How happy or grievous is a person after the action? Okay, was the action a positive thing for the individual? Was it a positive thing for others? Did it impact others? Did it impact the Buddhist himself or herself? So these are the four different elements, and we always, if we consider these four elements in detail and we take the time to actually consider what our actions actually entail and what will they actually spur on to, then they will, in essence, enable an individual to act in a moral way, to act in a manner which is considered ethical, which is considered in um, in concurrence with the Dharma, and which will spur on positive karmatic energy. Now, I hope that makes sense. Now, I am drawing to a close, and there'll be a chance for some questions at the end. Now, obviously, the Eightfold Path is important for Buddhists, for the ways they act and they perceive the world. The Four Noble Truths are also important. Again, they are a major part of the Dharma and teach how one should behave and how one can create a positive karmatic energy. Now, in addition to those teachings of the Dharma, there are also other teachings which are important, especially within the context of ethics. Now, one aspect being the 5 precepts. Now, to live means to act, okay? And as we've stated already, every time someone acts, it will always create a positive or a negative consequence. Every time someone acts, it will always create a positive or negative consequence. Now, in order to act in an ethical manner, one must always consider what would be the ethical way of acting in a specific manner. What would be the unethical way of acting in a specific manner? How should one avoid acting in an unethical manner and act in a more positive manner? Buddhist ethics always considers the best way to act beneficially. So what is the correct way? What is the best way of acting which will create the most positive consequence or the most positive energy? Now, the central code of Buddhist ethics is the 5 precepts, or the Panca Sila, the 5 precepts. Now, it's important to note that these are also referred to as the 5 ethical precepts, again suggesting how they impact an individual's daily lives. Again, daily life. Again, another thing that's important to note is that they're not commandments, or they're not rules. They're not statements that you must obey. They're precepts. They're sort of suggestions. They're there as moral guidelines which are available. They're on offer, but someone doesn't have to follow them. However, in order to be a good Buddhist, one would be expected to follow them. So they are there as precepts rather than hard-on rules. They're not commandments, suggestions, recommendations, principles, precepts. So the 5 precepts, we'll go through them in detail. The first precept before then, I've gone a bit ahead myself. Within Buddhism, obviously, actions are referred to as right and wrong. However, rather than using those specific terms, right, wrong, Buddhists do refer to them as skilled or unskilled. So is a specific action skilled, and has it created a skillful consequence? Is a specific action unskilled? Has it created an unskilled, a negative consequence? So they're the most important. Again, another important aspect within Buddhism, it's not dogmatic, it's not stating, it's not commanding, do this because it's right, do that because it's wrong. Different to some other religions, for example, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, which have more solid type rules and saying this is right or this is wrong. Buddhists tend to view them as more precepts. These are good suggestions which will ensure skillful consequences or unskilled consequences. Now the precepts, the 5 precepts, are as follows. The first being, one must abstain from taking a life. Now what that means is killing. So an individual must avoid killing any living being. Now in the context of animals, it's worse to kill a large animal than it is to kill a smaller one. Why? Because it takes more effort to kill a larger animal than a smaller one. However, killing is still viewed quite questionable, and obviously this precept suggests that a Buddhist should not kill, should avoid killing in essence. In the case of people, a traditional way of viewing the world would be to say that it's worse to kill a virtuous person than, say, a criminal. Again, within the level, what's the worst, what's not as bad. Still, killing is still frowned upon in essence. It's still incorrect. And the precept goes on to state in general that killing with hands, with encouragement, through missiles, through slow poison, through sorcery, magic, and through psychic powers, they're all forbidden. In essence, every type of killing is frowned upon in actuality, and one must abstain from taking a life. Now, the second precept being, one must abstain from taking that which is not given to you. suggesting obviously stealing, taking someone else's property. You should not steal. Now, what's interesting with these precepts is you can see certain similarities with, say, the Ten Commandments within Christianity or Judaism. Obviously, the Ten Commandments, another name on the Ten Commandments being the Decalogue or the 10 ethical commandments, again, similar to the 5 ethical precepts. Thou shalt not steal, abstain from taking which that is not given to you. Now, the third precept being abstain from sensual misconduct. Now, sensual in this regard means sexual. So, abstaining from acting in a misconducted sexual manner. Now, this can be interpreted in various different manners and has been interpreted by different Buddhists over the centuries in different ways, and can be referred to as adultery, for example, not to commit adultery, or abstain from sensual misconduct from incest. It can be used for different contexts within different societies and different cultural contexts in actuality. The next, abstain from misspeaking. So to misspeak means to lie or deceive with words, to tell porkies, to tell fibs. Now, the seriousness of the offence depends on the circumstances. So this precept acknowledges that maybe to tell the truth isn't the best option every time. So sometimes it can be, telling a lie can be excused if circumstances show that to tell a lie was the best option in that regards. However, it's always best to tell the truth more than anything. Again, tell the truth, don't tell lies, don't spread gossip, that's another thing. Abstain from misspeaking, not to use harsh language also. That's another important aspect of abstaining from misspeaking. Now, the other precept is abstain from drinking alcohol or taking drugs. Abstain from intoxicating things that will cloud the mind of a Buddhist, or will have an impact on an individual's ability to act and perform and actually just be in general. So they are not to drink nor take alcohol, take drugs either. However, Buddhists who have prescribed drugs, they are allowed to take them. So you're allowed to take prescription drugs, but you're not allowed to take any other unlawful drugs in that regards. Now, they're the 5 precepts in essence, and as we can see from the final precept, this recommendation is one to help clear the mind and body of all the negative elements. Now, these 5 precepts, they all attempt to clear the Buddhist body, mind, and self, obviously no self, and an individual's ability to live by detoxing oneself from those negative elements and spurring on an individual to act in an appropriate manner, to act in the best possible way. Now, they're the 5 precepts that Buddhists are expected to follow. Now, if you're a monk or a nun and a Buddhist, you are expected to follow 5 additional precepts, and I want to finish by looking at these. These are the 5 additional precepts for the Sangha. The Sangha being the order, the order of monks and nuns, monks, bhikkhus, and bhikkhunis, nuns, obviously. Now they have 5 additional precepts, so they have to keep all those other 5, abstaining from sexual misconduct, abstaining from misspeaking, abstaining from taking drugs and alcohol. They are also told to abstain from eating during inappropriate times, i.e. after the afternoon. So they're not to eat during the evening. They must stop eating in the afternoon. They are to abstain from singing, dancing, playing an instrument, or attending an entertaining performance. They're not to be influenced by song and dance and more sort of entertainment elements. They are to abstain from wearing perfume, makeup, and jewelry. These are things people can do without. So Buddhist monks and nuns should not need them. They are to abstain from sitting on high chairs or sleeping in comfortable beds, again, to make sure that an individual does not become too lazy, in essence, too comfortable with flourishment in life, rather than, because if you have a nice bed, the chances are you might have a lie-in. Well, nuns and monks shouldn't do that. They're not to have nice chairs, because there's a tendency, if you sit in a nice chair, that you might not listen as well as if you were sitting on a harsh wooden chair, when you were forced to listen to someone dictating and speaking like I'm preaching here now to you. I hope you're all in nice chairs. I wouldn't wish you to be in uncomfortable chairs. However, Buddhist monks and nuns must sit in have on lower chairs, not high stools, and not have comfortable beds. And the final one being, they must abstain from accepting money. And in this regards, which is something you all know, Buddhist monks and nuns, they do often go around with their bowl to ask for charity, and obviously people in the community give them food, etc. Buddhist monks and nuns should not need money. They shouldn't need that material element within their lives. And that's the ethics of Buddhism within 50 minutes. Wow, I feel like I've just ran, I think, a sprint more than a marathon. So we've discussed a lot within that time period of 50 minutes. But the main thing being is that Buddhism, in essence, places great emphasis on ethics, and the way individuals act in an ethical manner can be influenced by Buddhist thought, and obviously the Dharma. The Dharma has several ethical implications and several ethical teachings within it. So I think with that there, has anyone got any questions that you would like to ask? Right. Okay, so from Katie, could you say that the 4 elements of karma are similar to the ideas of virtue ethics? In a way, you could possibly, definitely, you could say, because with virtue ethics, you always consider how to act in a virtuous manner. How can you create a positive, a positive consequence within how someone acts? And definitely, you could say that the 4 elements of karma they do have some similarities with virtue ethics. Definitely, that's an excellent comparison. Thank you for that. Then Anisha, for karma, can the consequences only be good or bad? Is there no in between? That's a good question. That's a fantastic question. Again, in actuality, it's always either good or bad. However, the level of how good or how bad it can be can vary. So you will have certain consequences with karma being quite negative, but maybe other types of negative karma being not as bad. So you do have different levels. So you have like a different degree scheme in a way. You have some types of karma which are wholly very bad, you'd say, which score a 10 maybe on the bad scale. However, you'd have some others which score maybe 1 or 2 or 3. So there are different levels, but they do tend to be either good or bad. However, there are differences within those, definitely. Thank you for that question, Anisha. Then T. Saunders and Loisy, thank you for thanking thanking me for that session. I hope it's been of some use. I just want to stress as well, if you think of any questions after today's session that you thought, oh, I wish I should have asked that, or maybe something that will pop into your mind some of the time, do feel free to email me by all means. My email address is g.evans-jones@bangor.ac.uk. By all means, do email me. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. And we have one other question from Anisha. Thank you for that. Were the 5 extra precepts for Mahayana Buddhists only? So the 5 extra precepts were for members of the Sangha, so therefore Buddhist monks and Buddhist nuns. So for Theravada as well, definitely. So yeah, so if you want to be a Buddhist monk or a Buddhist nun, you have to have an extra 5 precepts to try and live according to. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Thank you for listening to me rambling on for a bit, and I hope that has been of some use. So thank you very much and take care. And hopefully maybe I'll see you soon, sometime in the future or in the other sessions over the next few days. Okay then. Bye everyone. Goodbye.